New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara is undoubtedly the heart and soul of the New Orleans Saints. How did he contribute to the win, the shutout against the Las Vegas Raiders? We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL. And here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And it is a Victory Monday episode here on today's Locked On Saints. And we're going to be discussing a couple different things. Will there be a quarterback controversy, or is there one brewing down the road for the Saints with phenomenal performances by not only Paulson Adebo, who had a nice rebound game, but also rookie Alontae Taylor, who continues to impress? Where that controversy would come from and what I would do if it's there, we'll break that down. We're also going to take a look at Andy Dalton, who, for now, made Dennis Allen look pretty right in terms of putting his trust in him as the starting quarterback moving forward. Can he keep that going, though, is the big question. I'll tell you what I'm looking for. But first, Alvin Kamara is the heart and soul of the New Orleans Saints. Not just offense. He's the heart and soul of the New Orleans Saints right now. I posed the question a second ago. How did Alvin Kamara contribute to the New Orleans Saints not just win, but shutout of the Las Vegas Raiders? A win, a statement win that the New Orleans Saints absolutely needed. And I'm gonna toot my own horn a little bit in today's episode. I'm gonna take credit for some stuff. This isn't something I usually do, but hey, there's some stuff that happened today that I'm feeling pretty good about. But the easy way to answer the question is, well, Ross, he scored 3 touchdowns, you idiot. Yes, that's one part of the answer, but it goes beyond just the 3 touchdowns. Remember, Alvin Kamara is the guy that stood up in front of the locker room and challenged the locker room for accountability, fleecing, getting better, playing Saints football, getting their swagger back after the Thursday night football loss up against the Arizona Cardinals. He was the person that stood up and did that. And let me be clear. I don't think that it's a bad thing that a player did that. I think a player has to do that. It has to be someone that's on the field, that's fighting with the rest of the team, that stands up and does that. But as I've said from the very beginning, having it be Alvin Kamara is such a unique impact. It's that quiet friend in your group that all of a sudden isn't quiet anymore because they're mad about something, and they're never mad, and you take that just so much more seriously, right? So for Alvin Kamara to go up there and challenge that team and himself, he didn't remove himself from the equation, but he challenged everybody in the organization, everybody on the team, on the roster, to get their swagger back, to play Saints football, to stop having a losing mentality. And then he went out on this field, the Caesars Superdome, which if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sitting in front of right now, or above, I guess. He went out on the field and he backed it up. And I'm not saying he backed it up. I'm saying he backed it up, right? He walked it like he talked it. There's a lot of song references up in here today. This is pretty good. So when you look at where Alvin Kamara had an impact, it wasn't just the 3 touchdowns. It wasn't even just adding in the locker room speech. It wasn't even just adding in his on-field display of what it is that he demanded of the people around him and demanded of himself, and showing you, I've held myself accountable, where you? To shout out John DeShazier. It's also what he did when he scored that first touchdown and how it impacted this building. And I'm not just talking about a 53-man roster and a 16-person practice squad and, several different players on the coaching staff and all that. I'm talking about 70,000 people 70,000 plus people who were impacted when Alvin Kamara scored his first touchdown, when he fought his way into the end zone. It changed everything. I was sitting in the press box for this game, since it was a home game, and you can feel everything shift. Remember, the Saints' first drive of this game, which no one's ever going to talk about, was a 3-and-out. 3 straight short passes that went pretty much nowhere. That could have been the shot in the foot that ends up starting off the New Orleans Saints sputtering offense like we've seen early on throughout this season. But then Pete Carmichael said, I ain't writing back. And he's put together a drive that was incredibly creative, that attacked all over the place and utilized the best weapons that the New Orleans Saints have, Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. And they also got Rashid Shaheed involved, who had a big catch down the left sideline as well. When Alvin Kamara scored that touchdown, this place erupted, and it never calmed down. You want to talk about swagger? You know what gives the New Orleans Saints swagger? Sometimes this home stadium. And let me be real. Like, home field advantage hasn't been a thing for the Saints over the course of the past 12 home games. Going into this game, they were they had 4 wins over the course of those 12 matchups. They were 4-8. In their last home games, I'm counting from 2021 on, because 2020, no one had home field advantage, right? It was just gross. Like, there was nobody in the stands, so I don't even count those. But if you did, they'd be 10-10 since 2020, if you wanted to throw those in there. Now they get this big win, and this could be the start of dome field advantage being back, something special. And it all starts and ends with Alvin Kamara, who is the heart and soul of this team, of this franchise, and right now, even of this fan base. Remember, there are a lot of people who are kind of up in arms, and not really up in arms, but are kind of walking on eggshells right now when it comes to Alvin Kamara, because there were all of those trade rumors around potentially the Saints shipping him off to Philadelphia and all this other stuff that just got blown out of proportion. It was one dumb comment, and then it became a bunch of speculation and a dumb Twitter account doing too much. That's not to say that Alvin Kamara won't be traded. We've seen impossible things. I didn't think that the Saints would trade Jimmy Graham while he was flying a plane, but they traded him midair. Okay, stuff happens. It's unlikely. It's very unlikely. But my point being that after the game, Rod Walker of NOLA.com asked Alvin Kamara, like, you might not pay attention to things over on social media. And Alvin was like, no, be specific. Tell me what it is you're talking about. And you mentioned the trade rumors. And the first thing that came out of Alvin Kamara's mouth wasn't, no, I don't really pay attention to that. It wasn't, that this is a business. I'm going to let the other people handle that right now. I'm just focused on playing football. These are all acceptable answers. But you know what Alvin Kamara said? Alvin Kamara said, I'm not really interested in playing anywhere else. He wants to be in New Orleans. And does he have control over whether or not he's traded? No. But again, it's unlikely he gets traded. But the thing is that when you're talking about a team that people have questioned leading up to this point, being split. Oh, the locker room might be split, that the team might be split because of the Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston decision. It's not. Oh, they lost the locker room because of this and that, and they're losing and blah, blah. It's not. Trust me, I'm in the locker room 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week. There's nothing lost about that locker room. And Alvin Kamara went up on that podium tonight and went up on this stage today at the Caesars Superdome and showed you that he's the heart and soul of this team. And if that's the heart and soul of this team, it's beaten. It's pumping right now. And the New Orleans Saints are very, very lucky to be in the situation that they're in. Another guy that had a nice day today, completed 73.3% of his passes, quarterback Andy Dalton. He made Dennis Allen look pretty right, at least for now. But what is it going to take to convince people that Andy Dalton should be the starter? I'll tell you what it's going to take to convince me as we continue on with today's episode of Locked on Saints. Now, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. I tell you all about BetterHelp all the time because I love BetterHelp. I use BetterHelp myself. This is an actual endorsement from me. I am somebody that believes very strongly in therapy. I was afraid of it for a really long time, as most people that grew up in my circumstances are, but eventually I bridged that gap. And I found therapy through like school and things like that, but BetterHelp changed the game for me because they cared about who I was and made sure that they paired me up with a therapist that reflects that. I don't go into a therapy session with anybody at BetterHelp and feel like I'm in the process of being changed into something I don't want to be, or that I'm being compared to or diagnosed based on this person's understanding of a baseline that doesn't apply to me. They match me with somebody that gets to know who I am and helps me thusly. It's awesome. And it's super accessible, it's super affordable, it's easy, and it's all online, which makes it so easy. You can do a video call. You can do a phone call. You can even do a chat if you don't feel like being on camera or anything like that. So there's a bunch of different ways for you to take advantage of BetterHelp, or a bunch of different ways for you to take advantage of therapy. But honestly, BetterHelp is the way to go. I'm giving you my hardcore recommendation here. So if you want to check it out, all that you have to do is get on your phone or on your laptop, your computer, or whatever, and you can learn more and save 10% off of your first month by going to betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON. And it's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Go and check out BetterHelp today. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Hey, quarterback Andy Dalton went out there and made Dennis Allen look about as right as he possibly could in one game on Sunday. But it's going to take more than one game to prove that choosing Andy Dalton as the starter moving forward is the right decision. I'll tell you what I'm waiting for here in just a sec. I appreciate you, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, for your second listen today, go and check out Locked On Sports Today. Catch up with what was a crazy day around the NFL and also all of the other big news around sports as well, bringing you insight from the local experts and getting you the insight that only Locked On can give you. You can find Locked On Sports Today on this app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So Andy Dalton goes out, he completes 22 of 30 passes, throws for 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, both of which to Alvin Kamara, completing 73.3% of his passes. It's a good day for a New Orleans Saints quarterback, and it's a good day for New Orleans Saints quarterback Andy Dalton. So if you were to take one game to say you get one opportunity, Andy Dalton, to show me that Dennis Allen choosing Andy Dalton over Jameis Winston moving forward is the right decision, this is a pretty convincing argument. Utilized Alvin Kamara in the passing game. Still down Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. He's never played a game with either one of those guys. Got Chris Olave involved. Chris Olave had a major impact despite the fact that he didn't have another one of what feels like just a routine 100-yard game for Chris Olave, what we've come to expect from him. He had 4 catches in this game. All 4 of them extended drives. They were all first downs. He also drew a defensive pass interference penalty, which gave the Saints another first down on 3rd and long. And 3 of the 4 first downs that he converted on his receptions were all also on 3rd down. So he had a magnificent impact on the New Orleans Saints. And as part of this young core that the New Orleans Saints are building through the draft, which is a good place to be, again, if you're the New Orleans Saints, to make an impact in this game. But Andy Dalton played really well. So why don't I sound super convinced at the moment? Well, it's going to take more than just a game. And yes, I restarted the evaluation process. Sue me. Hurt me if you want to, right? I understand that he also had 4 games to kind of prove himself that got him into that position. But the decision by Dennis Allen wasn't made until this past Wednesday, or at least wasn't publicized until this past Wednesday. So that's where all the criticism comes from, is the decision. So was the decision right? It was right today. And he had a great game. Jameis was on the sideline all game and looked like he was having a blast because the team was winning, right? So again, all this conversation about the locker room's going to be split and they lost the locker room. Stop. There's none of that stuff. Michael Thomas was cutting up over on the sideline, having a blast. He was out there cheering on not only the offense, but Alontae Taylor and the defense. It was awesome. But the point that I want to make is that if we've restarted the evaluation process, what more does it take to really convince everyone, or most people, right? Some people. It's going to be hard to get people to come across the aisle one way or another. So what will it take? I listen to Caroline Fenton over at Locked on LSU every single day, and she made a really phenomenal point about Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is the starting quarterback for the LSU Tigers, and there was kind of a conversation during the offseason. Would it be him? Would it be Garrett Nussmeier? And there was a split, just like there is a split between Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston here in New Orleans. There was that same kind of split in Baton Rouge. And the way that Caroline talked about it, I thought was really smart. And the way that she spoke about it is akin to how I feel with the Andy Dalton situation, that, okay, you went out there and you did that against the 26th ranked total defense, the 24th ranked total defense, 26th ranked passing defense in the NFL. That's great. Now, can you do it again? And can you do it just as calmly, just as confidently, just as efficiently? 73.3% completion percentage is something we haven't really seen in New Orleans since Drew Brees. There are a couple of examples of it in 2021, but that's relatively renewed for the New Orleans Saints to see that type of efficiency in the passing game. Averaging over 7 yards per play. That's a level of efficiency we haven't seen from the New Orleans Saints this season. So I think that for me, what I'm looking for is, can you do it again? Can you do it against a better defense? And then if you do, then you get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to getting Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry back and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to move the goalposts or anything like that. I just want to see, this is fantastic. This was a fantastic performance by Andy Dalton, but can you do it again? He had one bad throw in this game, one that probably should have been intercepted, but luckily wasn't. It would have been another one in striking distance. So it wouldn't have been great, but it didn't. It wasn't. So it's not, right? That simple. So my thing when it comes to Andy Dalton is fantastic game. Good job proving your head coach, who stuck his neck out for you, right, in your favor this week. And you went out there and proved him very right for now. Now, you'll have to do it again. And that's what it's going to be, right? That's the conversation. Can you do it again? Can you do it again? Can you do it again? But hey, eventually, that question is going to stop being asked as long as it continues being answered. So good for Andy Dalton, who had a phenomenal game. Really, really good game here in New Orleans against the Las Vegas Raiders, helping lead the New Orleans Saints to a 24-0 shutout win against those Raiders, and getting Dennis Allen a win against his old team. Alvin Kamara kind of gave us a peek behind the curtain when Dennis Allen said earlier in the week that he didn't really care about it. He apparently allegedly told the locker room today after the game that he did care and that it was great to get that win against the Raiders. So really, really cool stuff. But it didn't just happen because of the offense. We talked about Alvin Kamara, we talked about Andy Dalton, but there's potentially something brewing over on the New Orleans Saints defense because of how good these young these young corners are playing, and really the young defenders over on the defensive side. What it means for the New Orleans Saints future short term, which could mean a cornerback controversy, but more importantly, what it also means for them long term. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Before we get to that, though, I want to tell you about our sponsor over at Blue Nile. If you are looking for maybe the perfect engagement ring or maybe like a tennis bracelet, Christmas is right around the corner. Maybe you want to get something for moms, all that other stuff. If you just want something that's going to make the moment sparkle, whatever that moment may be, Blue Nile is the place for you to go. Independently graded diamonds, largest selection that you're going to find over at BlueNile.com, the original online jeweler. You're also going to find pieces that are priced significantly below traditional retailers as well. They've helped millions of couples that are creating the perfect engagement ring, and even more that are looking to just make those moments feel important. So if you're looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone, but having a little bit of trouble choosing, Blue Nile also has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift in your price range. They actually care about what your budget is, and they care so much about what your budget is. Let me tell you about this. If you want to make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile, you head over to BlueNile.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. You're going to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BLUENILE.com/locked-on to save $50 of your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, promo code LOCKED-ON. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a look at the New Orleans Saints defense, because there's a ton of young talent there that made a huge difference in this game that could mean a cornerback controversy ends up popping up later on this season, but also means really, really great things for this New Orleans Saints defense moving forward one way or another. You might be able to start to hear some of the Superdome construction, which is still raging on here on Poitras. So please forgive any of the background noise. I will do my best to filter it out, though, in post. So Alontae Taylor has been outstanding. Think about what Alontae Taylor's first 3 games of NFL action have been. He's matching up with guys like Julio Jones and Chris Godwin and DeAndre Hopkins and Zach Ertz and Devontae Adams, right? And he has just played incredible. I think he allowed a catch in this game, maybe 2 catches. One of them would be a deep pass for a first down on a 3rd and long toward the outside where they were kind of playing zone, not zone, but like soft off coverage, things like that. certainly hold that against him. And I think another one was like 0 yards. Davante Adams was targeted 5 times in this game, and he drew coverage from both Alontae Taylor as well as Paulson Adebo. Taylor and Adebo guarding Davante Adams, and Adams was targeted 5 times, had 1 catch for 3 yards. There was also a play in which Alontae Taylor was lined up, I believe it was Taylor, was lined up against Davante Adams. The Raiders motioned Josh Jacobs to the outside, which pulled Taylor to the outside, lined up on Josh Jacobs, and put Pete Werner in coverage on Davante Adams. And the Raiders didn't take advantage of that matchup. Instead, they threw to the flat to Foster Moreau. Now, they picked up the yardage that they needed, but you have to imagine via Davante Adams on a linebacker that you take advantage of that. But maybe Pete Werner did a better job than they expected in that coverage. So I'll tell you why that's important in a moment, because the young stars on this New Orleans Saints defense mean that there's a bright future, not just right now, if they can continue to play the way that they did today, which again, doesn't always mean a shutout, but still, if they can continue to play the way that they did today, it's a bright future immediately, but it's also a bright future in the long run as well. So one of the big questions that I'm asking though is when Marshon Lattimore gets healthy and you put Marshon Lattimore back out there, which I wouldn't expect that for the Monday night game against the Baltimore Ravens, by the way, but maybe the following week in Pittsburgh, who's going to line up opposite him? Do you go back to Paulson Adebo on the outside, who had a phenomenal rookie season, but struggled early on in his sophomore season, was starting to look like he was having a bit of a sophomore slump, but had a great game here today? Or do you go to Alontae Taylor on the outside, who has been consistently not just good, y'all, but great for this New Orleans Saints defense on the outside? Who do you go to? Or do you put Alontae Taylor in the slot? Or do you put PJ Williams in the slot because he told New Orleans.football, Nick Underhill, that he's planning to be back at practice this week? So if that's the case, is he ready for the Monday night game? And if he is, do you put him in the slot? But you've also got Chris Harris, who played really well there today. It's going to be a tough decision. So tell me what you think. Write it in the comments here on YouTube, or you can send me a tweet at Russ Jackson Nola. Do you put Alontae Taylor on the outside opposite Marshon Lattimore, or do you put Paulson Adebo opposite Marshon Lattimore? And just for the sake of conversation, let's say you don't have the option to put either one in the slot, because the Saints might not do that, because neither of those guys take a lot of reps in the slot. They do when they're forced into those situations based on game planning and mismatches and things like that the offense is dictating. But they are not slot corners, they're outside corners. So do you rely on one of them as depth, or do you force one into the slot? I don't know, but we're going to say that they're not, because you've got Chris Harris there. You've got Justin Evans, who's played well there. You've got PJ Williams, who'll make a return, and he plays well there. So what do you do over on the outside? I think I would continue with Paulson Adebo until he gives me another reason not to. Like if he struggles later on in the season after Marshon Lattimore returns the way that he struggled early on in the season, then I have no problem going to Alontae Taylor because of how good Alontae Taylor is. And I don't think Alontae Taylor, based upon my conversations with him and understanding his character, would be offended by that. Like he understands he's a rookie, he's still learning the ropes, stuff like that. Paulson Adebo has a claim to that spot because he was there his entire rookie season. And I'm sure Alontae Taylor would love to follow that up with being another rookie corner that has a great rookie season, just like Paulson Adebo did. But if they decide to stick with Paulson Adebo, I don't think Alontae Taylor is going to have any issue with that. He'll just work on getting better and continue to develop. Or you say, screw it, we want his energy, and you do put him in the slot. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the Saints handle that once Marshon Lattimore comes back. So I'd love to hear what it is that you think. But so that's kind of the short-term thing that's just kind of an interesting conversation. But further than that, Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, Pete Werner, Payton Turner, all 4 of those guys, 23 years old, y'all. Primary positions. Not premier, but primary. But 4 of those 3 are premier positions. You've got 2 outstanding outside shutdown corners. Shutdown is what you're hoping for them. But you got 2 outstanding outside corners. You have an edge rusher who had 2 sacks today. And then you have the linebacker that is the future of your defense, right? He is your Demario Davis post Demario Davis whenever that day should happen. Although no one's in a hurry for that. That's pretty good. And what's the other thing that all 4 of those guys have in common? They were drafted by this team. Now you want to see Payton Turner be more consistent, right? Like this guy has been off and on the inactive list as a healthy scratch and as an injured player. He has been injured. He's been managing injury, dealing with injury, stuff like that. But great to see him come out here and get 2 sacks tonight. Oh, and by the way, you've also got Marcus Davenport, who's 26, but I don't know if he's on the roster next year. We'll see what happens, right? He's on a 5th-year option right now. It's a valid question. So if you're the Saints and you're Dennis Allen and you're looking at next season and you're like, oh, okay, we got some young ballers. We got some young stars that are monsters on this team. That's a good situation for this defense to be in. Then you look at Alvin Kamara, 27 years old, which is, look, as for a running back that sees as much action as you'd like him to be a little bit younger, but you can't turn back the clock. You got Chris Olave, who's like, 22, 23? You got Rashid Shaheed. You've got these receivers. You've got talent all along this team that is young talent. And then at the same time, you've got veterans that are stepping up. Marcus May played a great game today. Great game. Demario Davis played a really good game. Cam Jordan played a great game today. David Onyemata, resurgence. That was nice to see, wasn't it? Tyrann Mathieu has both the team's interceptions so far this season. Got another one in this game. Almost had a third at the end. So you have the veterans that are standing up and all that. Oh, and of course you got Juwan Johnson as well, who's come on, big for you as a tight end too. So it's really cool to see like the amount of young talent that the Saints have that are all homegrown. And this is what we've always known the Saints to be able to do this. Look, they've missed on some draft picks. There's no doubt about that. But you're watching Cesar Ruiz take steps forward. Eric McCoy is awesome. Ryan Ramczyk is awesome. You will need to see what Trevor Penning looks like. Imagine if Trevor Penning comes out in November and looks incredible. And then you nailed, remember, we talked about this right after the draft. This entire draft class will be defined by the top 3 selections. Both first-round selections, Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, and the second-round selection in Alontae Taylor. And so far, the Saints are 2 for 3, and the 3 isn't a loss. It's not an L. It's just an incomplete evaluation so far because we haven't seen them out on the field yet. So the Saints, because of their young talent, could be having some tough conversations this season, especially when you think about like a cornerback controversy and what that might look like. But more importantly, they are in line moving forward to continue to be a very talented team of homegrown talent. And if they take on the personalities of guys like Cam Jordan, who was drafted here, Caden Ellis, who was drafted here, Alvin Kamara, who was drafted here, who have all expressed one way or another that they want to be in New Orleans, you got a really, really good young core. And it's nice to say that and not be talking about a Dell Demps team. All right. That's my one shot at Dell Demps for the year. I got it. All right. I appreciate y'all so much for coming through for another episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks so much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day. For your, tomorrow, coming up tomorrow, it's going to be Analytics Tuesday, so we'll take a deeper dive. I'm going to go home, rewatch the game, gather up all the analytics, and then bring you some good stuff. We'll take a look at how Alontae Taylor and Paulson Adebo performed by the numbers. We'll look at the EPA in terms of how Alvin Kamara impacted this game because he had a major impact in this game. And I'll tell you why. Oh, I didn't pat myself on the back. That's okay. I'll save it for tomorrow. Come back tomorrow and watch me pat myself on the back because the New Orleans Saints utilized Alvin Kamara exactly the way I said would work, and they did it. I can't take credit for it, but I can say, hey, good going me. So we'll get to all that in tomorrow's episode. Thank you so much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Sports today to get all of the game recaps that you need, the biggest stories covered, take of the day, all of the local insight the way that only Locked On can provide. You can find it on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you're also checking out Caroline Fenton over at Locked On LSU. And then, of course, Jake Madison over at Locked On Pelicans. Another big win for the Pelicans today as well. Great day for the city of New Orleans. Appreciate you, as always, for making me part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.